Hi, I'm Linda of Windy Oaks, and I'm so glad you joined me today. I have a very special video for you today because I got to go to Longacre Alpaca's farm and chat with Sarah Donohoe and meet several of her alpacas and tour the guest house. Come meet Sarah and her alpacas, and thanks for being part of the flock. I am here with Sarah Donohoe of Longacres Alpaca Farm. She's a longtime friend and mentor of mine. I got my alpacas from her, and she has been absolutely invaluable. And we're here at her farm, touring, meeting her alpacas, looking at her amazing guest house where you can come and stay for the weekend, take classes on fiber arts or alpaca care. And I'm really excited because I want you guys to meet Sarah and know how awesome she is. So I have a couple questions for you. And the first thing is, what's your favorite thing about alpacas?
Oh my gosh, my favorite things, is there an S on that? I do multiples. You know what, I think probably my most fascinating thing about alpacas is the psychology and sociology of them. Wow. I find that entire learning and observing experience just an amazing opportunity to try and figure out how you can influence the herd either positively or negatively. And so these guys are animals that respond to stress 10 times fold what most people would. They're very what we call cortisol influenced. And so when they get stressed, they can get themselves into some physical trouble. And learning that and realizing the impact that I can have, or what I do for the herd, the way I set them up, the way I create little hierarchies in there, the way I put some together here and some together there, it can either make or break, wow, what's going on with these alpacas. So I just absolutely find the whole hierarchy, the whole domain, if you will, of these guys to be absolutely fascinating. And I just like observing them and trying to learn from them. And I think that's the most, that's the best part of this, because you always learn something every day.
Yeah, they really don't think the way a human does, and they don't think the way a dog does or a cat does or anything like that. They're really different to interact with, and it's a learning curve when you get them, let me tell you, trying to get them what to do what you want them to do, rather.
Right, and we always say, and I know you've said this before too, when you have alpacas, 80% of it's just observation. It's not that the work is hard, but you do need to pay attention to them and see what they're doing, because they're very, well, we use the term all the time, they're stoic animals. They don't like to tell you when something's wrong. So just watching your animals is basically the major part of it.
Right.
Learning your animals. So most anybody can do that. And it's fun.
That's true. What's the hardest thing about keeping alpacas?
I think also is in that very same vein, knowing that, you set something up one season and you think this is going to work, and you have this guy with this guy and everything's going fine, and then 6 months later they decide they don't like their accommodations, they don't like their living quarters, or something's not working out, or I think that you always have to be ready to adapt. You think, oh, well, I was able to do this with this animal, and so, that worked. Well, no, sometimes you have to think differently, because they're all different. And so I don't know that's the hardest thing. I think that's the most challenging thing, actually. I don't find it hard. I think it's just challenging.
How did you get started in alpacas?
I just stumbled in. I'll tell you what. I went to a little festival where they were selling all kinds of things for the holidays, and I came across alpaca clothing, and I asked the person at the booth, what's an alpaca? It's like what everybody asks us, right? So what's an alpaca? And she said, and she showed me a card with their picture on with the alpacas, and I said, wow, that's what we need to raise on a farm, because we had bought a farm, but we didn't know what we were going to raise on it. So I tell people, don't do as I did. Don't go home and 2 months later get alpacas. Research it a little bit more.
Yes.
But we jumped in, both feet first, without thinking, and just learned on the fly. And it's doable that way too. You can do that, but it's probably best to research it a little bit more.
There's a big learning curve for me with alpacas, how to work with them, how to get them to accept me and to not be afraid of me. That was something that I struggled with a lot.
Right.
Was when they would run from me, I felt awful. I'm like, oh, I'm a monster. You know, so that learning curve, not to mention that they do have special health care requirements with the monthly shots that they have to get.
Sure.
Getting their toes trimmed on a somewhat regular basis, depending on the animal. Some of the males, if they're intact, they need their teeth trimmed. So they do have special health requirements, and you need to know about that and in advance. So if you don't have a Sarah of your very own, researching it first is definitely something I highly recommend.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So,
what one thing do you want people to know about alpacas?
I think the one thing I want people to know is that their fiber is absolutely incredible. I think what's happened, and again, this is an opinion, but in the last 10, 15 years, people have become so infatuated with the alpaca that they forget that they have incredible fiber on them. And the fiber, for those of us that are into, you know, the environment, eco-friendly, negative carbon, all of that, this is the perfect animal for it. I mean, you just for an entire long list of reasons. And of course, that goes true with all the wool animals. They're all very much in alignment with that. But I think it's just really important that people know that these are fiber animals. And if I could just put one plug in, I will say that we, as a society, 90% of us wear synthetics. And this is such a renewable source.
Yes.
10% of us wear natural fibers, and of that mostly is cotton.
Yeah.
So this is an incredible fiber. If you take care of it, that your clothes will last 20 years easily. So it just feeds into one thing, feeds into another. So I think that's probably the most endearing thing to me, is that people know that, oh my gosh, yes, they're gorgeous animals, they're cute, everybody wants to walk them and hug them and all that, but we forget how beautiful the clothing is from them.
Yes, absolutely. And as a hand spinner, and those of you that are hand spinners and knitters with me, there's nothing like working with alpaca. It's soft, it's lofty, it's silky, and you get beautiful shine and drape from it. So I love working with my alpaca fiber. It's one of my favorites, which is why I got alpacas to supplement my sheep.
And it blends so nicely with so many other fibers.
Yes.
I mean, it just, you know, people think, oh, it has to be 100%, but no, the blends are just gorgeous.
Well, and see, that's my favorite. Blending my Shetland about 40-60, depending on what I want, whether it's Shetland 40 or alpaca 40.
Sure.
And the other 60. It's like the perfect yarn, because you get all the memory and loft of the Shetland, and then all of the drape and the silk and just the warmth, because alpaca is warm. And if you can hear that in the background, there are a couple of alpacas having a little bit of a discussion. So hopefully it's not too distracting. One of the things that you'll first see when you come here is Sarah's livestock guardian dogs, 2 wonderful Great Pyrenees. Can you tell me a little bit about them and the role that they play here on the farm?
Oh, sure. So they are instrumental at keeping wildlife away. We have no tigers, we have no elephants here in Pennsylvania, we have no rhinos in Pennsylvania, all thanks to my wonderful dogs. But no, seriously, we're a little different than what most people do, because we let our dogs out to patrol. And we do that because we had so many paddocks, and it was just difficult to have, you know, to cover all the paddocks, basically. And we just found this to be simpler, so they patrol the outside of the paddocks, and they patrol at night. And they are just what I call annoying in their bark, and that it's continuous, and it just says to any predators, look, stay away. And so they work night shift, and they have it off during the day. And but they're also great companions.
Anything special about their care?
I think the biggest thing to realize is, all the commercials or that they say, if it's freezing outside, bring your dogs in. No, not with Great Pyrenees. Great Pyrenees are made for the winter. They love the winter. They don't do well in the summer, but they love the winter. They will lie in a snowdrift.
Yeah.
And they are miserable if you try and bring them in the house. So if they're not used to it, especially. Yeah. So yeah, they come in the house in the summertime when it's super hot to come into the air conditioning, but in the winter, I cannot drag them in.
And that's really important. A lot of people don't realize when they see dogs on a farm, a lot of times those dogs are working dogs, and that is a completely different situation than a pet dog. I mean, you always need to care for your dog. Her dogs have the ability to get shelter, water, food as needed, but they're not pets. They're members of the staff here, and that's something that a lot of people who don't understand about farms and farm dogs.
The other thing is people think that these are herding dogs, and they're not. There's a certain group of dogs that are called herding dogs. These are not. These actually live in with the alpacas on most farms, not ours, but on most farms. They will become one with the animals, and they're actually closer to the animals than they are to people at most farms. Ours is a little different from a lot of farms, but yeah, that's how they live 24/7, and that's where they're the happiest, and they never leave.
Yep,
they stay with the animals.
They have their job to do.
They do.
And then you also teach classes here at the guest house. What kind of classes do you teach?
My main emphasis is on all things alpacas, and that could be anything from birthing, breeding, even setting up a business plan, learning how to shear alpacas, how to do medical procedures, how to do exams, how to handle them, how to set up a farm. That's my major concentration. So yes, that's what we offer. And people can come here. We have packages, usually 2-night visits. They're inclusive packages with some of the meals included and an all-day workshop. And I do a few fiber classes, but most of mine are intro. They're not of your level at all. So, I refer all my advanced learning to you, Linda. But if anybody wants an introductory spinning or rigid head, I can offer that. But I'm certainly not of the advanced level by any means. So.
Well, I do a lot of intro as well, because that's one of the joys of fiber classes is you get to try different things. And then once you know what it is you like, then you go down that particular rabbit hole. So intro classes are wonderful. They're the foundation, and they're the gateway drug, if you will, to bring people
That's a
fiber.
great way to put it. Gateway drug.
So there's nothing to be ashamed of doing intro classes.
Yeah,
That's fabulous.
yes.
That's absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
How long have you been working with alpacas?
So we started in 2004. So the 17 years now.
Wow.
It's hard to believe. People always ask us, how many did you start with? Well, that's kind of hard to say, but I'll say we purchased a total of 18 over several years, and then we went for a long time without purchasing any. Now if we purchase, it's mostly to bring in a little bit of genetic variation into our herd. So that was our founding stock of a few males, mostly females, and then it just kind of grew from there. And now we're maintaining a group anywhere from 80 to 100. And they're all Wakayas. We don't have Surreys here. They're all Wakayas.
And the difference there is Wakaya, and I'll put the words on the screen for the spelling, but Wakaya is a shorter staple, a shorter length fiber, and it's a little bit more crimpy. Surrey is longer and silkier. So it's a slightly different fiber type of alpaca fiber. Think of the difference between, say, a collie and a Great Pyrenees,
right?
If you're thinking of the different fiber types.
Yes, and unlike sheep, I always tell people there's at least 230 breeds of sheep. There's only 2 brands of alpacas, and we know that in sheep there's a lot of crossbreeding as well. Well, we don't crossbreed in alpacas. The fleece is never quite as nice. So yeah, there's only 2 types, but I have all Wakaya here. The genetics have gotten so involved to try to run a farm with both kinds has really become kind of complex. So
I can imagine.
Yeah.
How long do your chores take every day?
You know what? One of the things that I will say 17 years of raising alpacas has taught us is to learn to do things efficiently. And so when people say, oh, we're looking at an alpaca farm we'd like to buy, and I say, well, just because it's, quote, called an alpaca farm, it might not function well. So that's what you should really be looking at and seeing how you can make your life easier by the way you set up. And that's one of the things I love to talk about, is setting up your farm to make your life as easy as possible and make the workload as easy as possible. So really, the workload in alpacas, when you have 80 to 100, is not any different than if you have 10 or 20. The workload really, it revolves around babies and birthing season and breeding season and marketing and showing and those sorts of things. So those are the big time requirements. But otherwise, it's just it doesn't exponentially increase into a long day of any sort.
That's cool.
So we've mechanized things a little bit, and just tried to make things set up so that we can work very effectively and very quickly and make the most of our time. And that's the whole key to it. So a couple hours in the morning, really.
Wow.
Yeah, we're done.
Impressive.
We're done. Yeah,
Nice.
Me and one other person. So.
Okay.
Yep.
And how many acres do you have here?
We have 130 plus acres, and we do our own hay. We have some other crops on here as well, so we do that as well. The other thing I do then is, so in addition to the teaching of classes in the guest house, I'm also available. Some people might have really sick alpacas that need some extra care. Maybe they're working, they don't have time for it, or they just don't really feel as comfortable doing that. I have the most fabulous veterinarian group that is wonderful to work with. I work very closely with them. I do house those animals and take care of them and get them back to health again, and work closely with my vets. So that's another option as well. So
that's good to know. I didn't know you could do something like that. That's great.
Yeah.
And then, are you on social media? And if so, what are your handles, and where can we find you online?
So my personal page, of course, Sarah Donohoe, but I don't do much posting on that. All my posting is either through Long Acres Alpaca Farm.
On what platform?
Facebook.
Facebook, okay.
Okay, and the guest house at Long Acres Alpaca Farm.
And I will link those in the description below.
Yep, or the two main links, so yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been an absolute joy. I love Sarah. I don't get to see her nearly as much as I'd like, so this was a good excuse to come and hang out with her. She has so much knowledge about alpacas that if you have any questions or want to take one of her classes, go check out her Facebook page, because you will not be disappointed. I took her shearing school a couple years ago and learned so much, and it was worth every
pulled
bruise.
muscle, every pulled muscle, every bruise. That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
We didn't create a lot of blood or anything like that, but it was just a lot of agony, wasn't it?
It was a long 2 days, but I learned so much. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really happy to have you on my channel, and thank you all for being part of the flock.
And best of luck to you, Linda.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay. Bye now.